Welcome to another fun-filled episode of the Patrick Coffin. I'm your board-certified host, Patrick Coffin, which works out because that's the name of the show. Before I introduce my guest, Kyle Mann, the editor-in-chief of the Babylon Bee, I want to make an invitation to you to join the True North movement. If your primary lens in life is not liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican, but true, false, and good, evil, you might find a place in our community. There are folks from multiple countries. It's growing by leaps and bounds. We have exclusive commentary. We have a water cooler, general community chat area. We have a book club, a movie club. I do live webinars. And you get the full, unexpurgated, unadulterated, unfiltered, uncensored version of the Patrick Coffin Show, plus an extra episode every week. So check out patrickcoffin.media. That's patrickcoffin.media. I think there's a place for you there. See you on the inside. All right, let's get straight to it. Invited back to the show. He said yes. Kyle Mann, the editor-in-chief of the Babylon Bee, the greatest satire site God has made. Kyle has also written and stars in a new movie called January 6th, the Most Deadliest Day Ever. Kyle Mann, welcome back, sir.
Thanks for having me back. It sounded like you didn't get a lot of return guests. You were like, he actually agreed to come back. So I don't know.
I get 99 yo's to every no's to every one yes. So it means so much. Awesome. Let me hit you right off the bat with a question you might not know the answer to, and that is, why was the quote, the Babylon Bee selected as the name for the site and the movement?
Yeah. I was there from day one, so I got a little inside story into that. But we're basically like, we were founded as this Christian satire site, and obviously the biblical reference to Babylon being the place that God's people were in exile. And that to kind of what you were talking about earlier with your guys's perspective of not being Democrat or Republican, but being good, evil, and true, false. It's, we our allegiance is to another kingdom. And so we're in exile, no matter what part of the culture war we find ourselves on or what party more aligns with us at a given time. We are in exile as the church. So the idea was kind of this dispatches from Babylon and updates from exile, and then the B is a nice sound to it, and it's the name of a newspaper, and it's also got a stinger. And stinger is good for a satire set, I think.
There's a book by Saint Francis de Sales, who's also the patron saint of shopping. De Sales,
nice.
Yeah, and he writes about bees. He has these spiritual nature kind of analogies from nature in his book, Introduction to the Devout Life. So my Catholic listeners might have heard of this book, Introduction to the Devout Life. And when I saw the title Babylon Bee, back when I first was introduced to it, I thought that's funny because it's a little offbeat, and the stinger reference that makes a kind of funny sense. But it's also a little bit surreal. People, when they discover the Babylon Bee world and they figure out, as some don't figure out at first, that it's satire, there's a disorienting feeling. There's like cognitive dissonance because Christians are supposed to be the straight-laced people. They wear the polyester cardigan. It's liberals that wear the Armani leather. They have the monopoly on funny and sarcasm, right? So it hits you in an unexpected way. I'm sure you hear that a lot.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Like Christians and conservatives too, kind of have this reputation of being unfunny and hating fun. We're the ones who are lecturing people, and we're the bad guy in all the 80s movies when the town just wants to dance and like no dancing. That's us. But there has been a little bit of a shift, I think. I mean, it feels a little bit more like we've embraced comedy and we've embraced fun and memes and entertainment and art. Where the left are now more the ones that kind of have these blindly religious beliefs. They're the ones who believe just the most insane things. The secular left has to embrace so many things, especially when they're embracing gender ideology and things that are on the fringes, that they have to blindly accept as their religion, and you can't laugh about it. Like those are their sacred cows, So they're more the ones telling you no dancing nowadays. So it's been fun to see that growth, I think, on the in the Christian world.
I think a good snapshot of what you just said is the way Team Trump approaches getting the word out about Donald Trump versus Team Walsh-Harris. There's no humor whatsoever. It's lame. It's cringy. They do these stupid rhyming things. It's like the whole thing is supposed to be a charming haiku poem. Whereas, especially Donald Jr. has savagely funny memes. So the conservative movement, whether or not you're going to vote for Trump, I'm just making the point that people with a more traditional conservative worldview seem to be really dominating the meme world. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, what's the saying, like the left can't meme or whatever. I mean, it's probably true on both sides that there's a lot of people that don't understand what a meme is. But like, look at Christian movies from 10 years ago or 15 years ago, and it's like that cringy, Kevin Sorbo gets hit by a bus and he's an atheist, and then he accepts Christ and goes to the Newsboys concert. Like that, it's that very didactic, preachy kind of feel in a movie where it's like clearly they just designed this movie to try to get you to accept Christ, and that's the entire purpose. And there's no artistic value whatsoever. And that's the feel you get from a lot of the left's entertainment memes messaging these days. Is like it's not designed to just be fun or be funny or make or like. It's not designed to just be good art in itself. Stuff from the left these days, whether that's Netflix shows or Disney movies or whatever, or memes, it's like lecturing you. Late night is also a good example, lecturing you on what you're supposed to believe rather than trying to make a good product. And so they've become the left has become the cringy Christian movie of 10 years ago.
Right. Yeah. It's like a bull-shaped, a bullhorn shaped movie.
Yeah.
And
yeah, exactly.
Do you think memes convert anybody? Do you think someone will stumble if they're, progressive Democrat voter and they stumble across a conservative meme that for conservatives they'll have a milk spurting moment because it's so hilarious. I just wonder if memes, in a way, accidentally serve to ossify each side. There's not a lot of traffic flow because of memering. Does that make sense?
The way that worldviews are formed and crystallized in somebody's mind, are interesting. And when you look at that, a lot of times it's just people's values that they've grown up with, and trying to topple those is a very difficult thing once somebody's formed those ideas. But I don't know that one particular meme is designed to this will change people's minds. But at the same time, just over time, over a long period of time, your movement is developing and building its muscle of humor, and you're becoming a more attractive movement, and you're becoming more confident in your beliefs and your worldview because of stuff like that, which is in turn going to grow this community. And that's what a lot of people are looking for in a worldview, is community. It's not necessarily that they are attracted to the truth or falsehood of an idea. They're looking for acceptance. And if you're creating this fun, joyful movement that has fun with its leaders and isn't really this cult, not like a super far right, people that just worship Trump fanatically, when it's less like that and more like we're making fun of Trump, we're having fun with Trump, even though we don't agree with him on everything, that movement becomes over time more and more attractive. So it's an interesting question. Yeah, I know we've heard stories of people that have been affected by the Babylon Bee and moved more to the right. We've had people email us about stuff like that, or people that were kind of lapsed Christians and saw the bee and then got involved in the community and eventually kind of came back to the light. So it does happen, but I think it's more just kind of slowly changing the temperature of the conversation over time.
And it's hard to know what political persuasion funny is. You look at someone like Ricky Gervais, who is probably, a man of the left based on the things that he said in interviews. He's got this atheist hobby going on. And yet his Golden Globes monologue from 2020 is for the ages. He could say the same thing now about Puff Diddley, the diddler that he did about Epstein. And that kind of landed the wrong way. If you look at the faces of people like Tim Cook or Tom Hanks, they're like, is he really saying these things out loud? I find it beyond hilarious because it matches truth with humor.
The heart of a comedian is one of chaos.
That's a bumper sticker.
That's sure. That's a comedian wants to toss a hand grenade into the middle of a room and run. Like there's a real joy, whether you're a stand-up comic or you're the Babylon Bee throwing something out online. Like there's a real joy in just seeing the freak out, whether it's from your base or from the other side. Like there's a relentless pursuit of what the funniest joke is, and Gervais is probably writing this monologue about Epstein or whatever, and he's like, he's thinking like, what could I say in that room that would generate the absolute most shock value, And I don't know that every person needs to be a shock comic or whatever, but it's like he knew that it was so strategically planned. Like he knew that this is going to make waves. People are going to be talking about it on Patrick Coffin's show years from now, like there's something about that where it's not left or right. It's like, what's the funniest thing that I could do right now? And I think there's a real authenticity in that on Gervais's part.
Yeah, you see this in the comedy of people like George Carlin. I have been revisiting a lot of George Carlin's commentary in this kind of the substructure of the joke is a point about the world and about the oligarchs that run the world. And I can't read any political spectrum placement in people like George Carlin. Kyle, I wanted to ask you, do you guys have meetings on what's funny and what really crosses the line? Because a lot of my Catholic friends, I'm a practicing Catholic, they were a little upset with the Joseph Mary. Joseph says, "You're going to be a perpetual what?" Now, I think there's an affectionate spirit behind that, but it can get like hitting third rails. You know what I mean? How do you determine what the line is, and is it a bright neon line that's obvious, or there's a kind of a no man's land of what's quote acceptable unquote?
Well, we sit down and we try to figure out what will offend Catholics the most.
Right, makes sense.
And then we just put that.
It's good business model.
No, like that's a funny one. Yeah, we wrote this joke where Joseph says, "You're going to be a perpetual what?" says Joseph to Mary on wedding night. And what the funny thing about when we were pitching that is like, I think I came up with the joke and then I kind of pitched it and people thought it was funny. But when we were pitching it and we editors were discussing in these meetings you're talking about, like, is this too far? Does this go across the line? There's tons of considerations, right? Like, have we been hitting the Catholics too much? Maybe we do one Catholic joke and then we do a Protestant joke later, or like, let's lay off the Catholics for a bit. We'll hit them in a few weeks, And so all of the we'll wait until Pope Francis says something dumb, and then
that only takes a few minutes. So
that's the problem,
the Kyle Mann Eye of Sauron.
Exactly. We're scanning the land, but like with that one, it was funny because I thought Protestants would be more upset because the structure of the joke assumes the doctrine of perpetual virginity is true, right? Like it's just playing with that and saying like, well, if it's true, then maybe this is what Joseph thought. Like it's kind of playing with it. So I thought like our hardcore Reformed Calvinist brothers were going to be more upset. We're going to be more upset at us. But it's like, you hit something that like clearly we don't feel passionate. Like I don't think any Protestants really feel passionately about doctrine of perpetual virginity. That's just like, oh yeah, Catholics believe that. Like that's interesting. And so we didn't really think of it as this big sacred thing. And of course, Catholics think of it as like a big sacred core tenet of the faith. So, it's one of those things you're like, like you said, you touch the third rail and you're like, Zap, oh, geez, like I didn't realize that was going to have so many reactions. But yeah, we definitely discuss those things ahead of time. And it's always interesting to see what connects in that way.
I had a hand back in the day, probably 10 years ago, in a kind of a smaller scale Catholic version of the Babylon Bee called the Eye of the Tiber. And again, people often didn't get that it was parody because it's written pretty straight up. Like I think the granddaddy of this whole genre is The Onion, and The Onion, they're also very nerve hitty, and they don't, they make sacred hamburgers out of sacred cows all the time. But people are not used to Christians making fun of themselves. There's a self-referential premise of the Babylon Bee that there's an open season about the way we behave, and there's like we shouldn't be shy to point out foibles. Like one that knocked me off my chair was, I'm going to butcher the exact title, but it was a photo of Joel Osteen on his white yacht throwing copies of his book to Hurricane Katrina survivors in the water. You're living your best life or something. And I thought, man, that's just lightning in a bottle right there.
Yeah, exactly. That's the kind of thing, like I said, the hand grenade of comedy. It's like, how many people can be upset about that? Like people who like Joel Osteen, and then people that are mad that you're like playing with a deadly hurricane right after it happens. Like, there's so many different ways for people to be mad at us.
It's like the question: is it too soon? Is it too soon? Right?
Yeah.
Let me just crank through some of the headlines that I liked a lot just through the years. Man on right side of history surprised to find he still went to hell. Meow Mix, the cat food people, Meow Mix sued for false advertising after study shows cats were just making standard cat noises and not asking for a particular brand of food. Report, mansplaining down, but woman confusion up. Do you have any personal favorites, whether you wrote them or not? Any come to mind in your mental Rolodex of like you really nailed it?
Yeah. I think one of the ones we have is like I always love like the Bible jokes, especially when you can kind of take something that's happening today and then mix that with something that happened in the Bible. We had like Adam and Eve, and she's handing him the apple, and it's like study finds 100% of men would eat absolutely anything given to them by a naked woman.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or we had one that during the pandemic that was like experts find that Goliath was killed by COVID-19, and then and we had the painting of David swinging the sword to decapitate. And it's like, no, it was COVID-19 that actually did him in. So those are always my favorite. Like when you can like Venn diagram, the circles, overlap current event and Bible story is like the best. Yeah.
Now you've branched into video production. I saw the one, kind of how Christianity arose from an atheist perspective. I'm trying to remember the exact one. It's from a few months ago. Do you know the one I mean? Making up the story of the resurrection.
Yeah, it was like disciples. It's the disciples coming up with the hoax that we're going to fake the resurrection. Yeah. Right.
Well, Kyle, I can tell a lot of thought went into that. That was a very well written thing. It's not just, hey, let's just do this. Let's put on fake beards and sandals and do some funny things. There was a lot of layers to that one.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And like the comedic climate that we're in today is everybody's doing like TikTok videos where it's like exactly what you said: throw on a fake beard, hold up the phone, I'll say something, and then we'll do this way, and then I'll be the other character, and then I'll flip it. And there's not a lot of writing that goes into it, or it's just playing on an established TikTok format, and you're just like playing a Nicki Minaj song in the background, and that becomes the joke. So right, like the art of a good sketch has been lost in some way, and so we do spend a lot of time trying to write the good dynamics and cadence of the sketch.
Now let's turn to the documentary that you as Garth Strudelfud present, which is so funny and so ballsy to go after January 6th. It's called January 6th, the most deadliest day ever, correct? And
yeah, January 6th, the most deadliest day. We kept changing the title, like January 6th, the most deadliest day in all of human history. Like that was the original title. Yeah, we shortened it, so it's the most deadliest day.
Well, that's another thing. Brevity really is the soul of wit, right? There's such a thing as gilding the lily. It's like too much. You want to like really omit needless words, and I think that nails it. I say ballsy because this is really this is the political sacred cow of our time. You can't say anything other than that January 6th was the storming of the Bastille of all sacredness and holiness, that it was the closest we came to the end of the world. The hyperbole about that. I know people who were there, and it's nothing like the after account, retrofitting the Pelosi agenda of the end of the world as we know it. Why did you decide to go after that? Because people spent time in jail. People have suffered terribly because of this and the false narrative surrounding it. Why January 6th as a subject matter, considering how, I won't say literally dangerous, but maybe risky.
Yeah, it's both a tough topic and an easy topic, right? Because it's easy because it's such an empty space. People don't want to make humor about it. People don't want to cover it in that way, because it's just like, I mean, it's not a show. It's not a movie we can go pitch to Netflix and get put up on Netflix. No Hollywood studio is going to take it or anything. So it's something you definitely have to do on an indie basis. But that makes the comedy easy, not easy, but it makes the comedy like so fresh because it's like, wow, they're actually going after that. And I think that edginess does help. And then the other challenge though, from a creative perspective, is trying to communicate what's essentially like a very nuanced point, that January 6th wasn't like a great day in our nation's history. Like, I think a lot of conservatives were pretty embarrassed that day. Like, oh man, these guys are like getting rowdy. But at the same time, that doesn't give the left a free pass to sit here and say like, oh, this is the worst day in human history. And, at the beginning of the movie, obviously we play like Kamala Harris's statement where she says that it's on the level of September 11th and December 6th. Like, what?
Those are the funniest moments, Kyle, when you just show people reacting right. In then real time. That's that you can't. Parody and reality have met and mated. It's hard to separate them.
Yeah, we keep saying that watching the movie. I'm like, man, I wrote all these funny jokes, and the funniest parts of the movie is when we just have Kamala Harris talking, or
right,
or AOC saying something about how horrible. Mm-hmm. But it's so hard to parody because it's so insane anyway.
Yeah. Now, the reason why a Netflix or a platform like that wouldn't take it is kind of obvious. How are you going to disseminate this? Because people on all across the spectrum should get a gander at this.
Yeah, the first thing we're doing is putting it behind our paywall, so people that go to babylonbee.com/January 6th can become a Babylon Bee member. So we've had a subscription service for a long time, and we've gotten pretty strong support and a lot of people signing up. But they essentially just sign up to help us out. They just sign up and they don't really get a ton in return. We do like exclusive podcasts and stuff, but mostly people just sign up out of the goodness of their hearts and wanting to see free speech and comedy prevail, which is awesome. But we wanted to give a little something back to those people and actually have some incentive for people to come join us. So hopefully this will be the first of many. But yeah, it's going to babylonbee.com/January 6th, and it'll be available for our subscribers on October 11th. And then after that, after the initial exclusive release, we may look for other ways to more broadly get it out there, whether that's digitally distributing on X or YouTube or rentals or whatever. We're figuring it out still.
A lot of the content of my commentaries and interview guests and all the things I do on YouTube have to be heavily censored by me. To get the full iteration, unfiltered, uncensored, go to the True North Movement. That's patrickcoffin.media. You'll find an extra episode. You'll find all the activities around the water cooler, our main community chat. We do books, we do movies, we do culture, faith, and reason. So get the entire conversation, uncensored from YouTube. Go to patrickcoffin.media.